Hey, 4C Divers! Welcome to Facebook Live. And welcome Horizon Divers. Hopefully we've got some people down in the Key Largo area tuning in as well. Well, if you are new to our 4C lives, you go ahead and you go to the comment section, say hello to us, type where you're listening in from. We want to know. If you don't know me, my name's Nikole. I'm the social media director, and I've got a few awesome people here today that are going to help me with a presentation. April was our rec month, and we weren't able to get this presentation in the month of April, so we're going to just sneak this into the first part of May. And we're really excited because when it comes to recs, there are some fantastic recs in the Key Largo area. So we have a fantastic presentation, and we're excited to show you some cool photos and give you some stories about how you dive the recs down in that area. First off, if you are new to our Facebook, you want to go to our invite for tonight. I'll put it in the comments section. You want to go in and you want to register, because once you register, you're going to be put into a raffle. And at the end, we're going to do a random name picker, and we're going to be giving away an SDI Enriched Air Nitrox digital kit. Woo! Woo! So if you're not nitrox certified, we're going to get you nitrox certified. So make sure you get your registration in before 6:45, and that way you get your name put into the raffle. All right. So today is
May the 4th be with you.
That's right, guys. All day, all day long. May the 4th be with you. All right. So let's get this party started. What do you say? We've got Jeff down in the bottom there. We've got Rachel over here. So let's go ahead and start. Let me get this presentation pulled up. And boom. Recs of the Key Largo area. Who are you, Rachel?
Hi, guys. Rachel, obviously. I am the dive travel manager for Force E, and we are just starting to get trips going. Very excited about that. And we are starting with our first trip, which will be to the Spiegel Grove. So this is a great introduction to learn about the different wrecks that are around the Key Largo area. And Jeff's going to come and tell us a lot more. And yeah, great.
Awesome. Jeff, tell them who you are.
My name's Jeff. I'm the head instructor at Horizon Divers in Key Largo, Florida. I teach most of the advanced rec and basic rec, as well as technical diving courses at Horizon. I've lived in the Keys for almost 10 years now, with a little over 1,000 dives on the Spiegel Grove and 500 or so on the Dwayne.
Awesome.
And you're down in the Key Largo area, but do you dive other places in the world?
Oh, of course. I'll be in Bonaire next week. When I first got certified, when I was a wee little scuba diver, I dove North Carolina a lot. I just came back from Key West yesterday. I'm a cave diver in North Florida. So I go to Jenny Springs and Peacock and a lot of those places. Hopefully next year I'll be in Scapa Flow in the UK. So I'll dive anywhere where there's water.
Awesome.
All right. So, okay, guys, first, before you can understand the wrecks of the Key Largo area, we need to understand what the topography and the reef system is like here. Jeff, there is a marine sanctuary and the John Pennekamp Park that's there. Can you tell us a little bit about that area?
So John Pennekamp State Park was established in 1963. Right, it was one of the first marine parks ever in the United States. Okay, so it'll be 60 years old next year. And John Pennekamp State Park is actually relatively small, right, with the majority of the dive sites kind of being outside of Pennekamp because it's outside the state line. The National Marine Sanctuary, which is managed by NOAA, was established in 1990. Okay, and the National Marine Sanctuary starts from the southern end of Biscayne Bay and extends all the way down to the Marquesas in Key West, or just west of Key West. And it runs from shoreline to 300 feet of water. So everything in the Florida Keys is in the National Marine Sanctuary.
Okay. And what about the lighthouse in that area? Do you know the history of that?
So in Key Largo, they didn't have real lighthouses. There's a lighthouse in North Key Largo called Carey's Fort, and it's still there. There's a lighthouse in Islamorada at Alligator Reef, and it is still there. In Key Largo at Elbow Reef, we had at one time a burn barge, all right, where they just had a bonfire on a barge, and then eventually it became a light barge. And then at Molasses Reef, there was another one on the south side of Key Largo. At Elbow Reef, that lighthouse got destroyed, I want to say, during Hurricane Wilma. And they never rebuilt it because by that time everybody had GPS. But back in the day, it's kind of weird and funny to think of, but the people that lived in Key Largo would actually move the light barges closer to shore, which would help ships to run aground. And then they would go out and, quote, help the ships salvage their stuff. Right? Or they didn't have GPS. The burn barges, went out in storms, or the lights stopped working and ships just ran aground. Because all of Key Largo has this long barrier reef that pretty much extends the entire length of the Florida Keys.
Absolutely. And so when we're talking about some of the wrecks that we have in this presentation, like you said, they didn't have a GPS system. They didn't have ways to chart the topography. So they didn't know what the depths were, and they were running aground. And that's why some of these wrecks are actual natural wrecks, whereas there's other types of wrecks, which are the ones that are sunk intentionally to become artificial reefs. And so we will be talking about some of those as well. If you're looking at this map right now, you can see that the Spiegel Grove is kind of on the outside. So that was a intentional sinking. It's not sunk on top of a reef. And then some of the other wrecks are within this area are on the reefs. Like you can see the Benwood here. That one went down, and we're going to talk about how it went down. But that's why we wanted to talk a little bit about why the topography and the reefs in Key Largo are key to understanding how you got so many wrecks in the area. Do you know what your estimate about how many wrecks are in this area?
No, not exactly, because there could be as many, several hundreds. And if you think about it, some of the wrecks that we have just got identified, like they could actually name the wreck within the last 10 years. Wow. And some of them, especially wooden ships, right, are either buried in the sand or there's just, a couple ribs of wood that are still left.
Absolutely. So down in your area, it's a little different than up here where we're diving. We usually do for wreck dives, we'll have a dive master jump in, tie off to the wreck, and then untie when the divers are done. Or we'll do a hot drop because maybe the currents are too strong and we can't tie into. But down in your area, you actually have a mooring ball system. Can you explain how that works?
So because we're the National Marine Sanctuary, we follow federally set guidelines. And one of those guidelines was in the 90s, they established the mooring ball system. And NOAA actually maintains around 700 mooring balls in all the Florida Keys. Okay. And the reason being is because they don't want boats putting anchors down. All right. They don't want people dragging line across or getting hooked and then having to unhook. So they put mooring balls on all the reefs. All right. And all the recreationally accessible wrecks. So the wrecks that are 130 feet and shallower all have mooring balls on them. And it really facilitates the dive boats to be able to tie up and untie faster. It allows us to make it easier to dive for all levels of scuba divers, right? We don't have, I'm not going to say we don't have current, because we do have plenty of it, but it's not an everyday thing for us. So like today on the Spiegel, we had no flow. Right, you could step off the boat and go straight down and land right on the wreck. Whereas 5 days ago, if you tried to do that, you would end up, quarter-mile away from the wreck. So with the mooring balls and the down lines, it really just makes it easier for us to tie up and untie, divers to get in the water and get out. You have to come back to where you were parked, meaning you have to remember what ball you went down and what ball to come back up. But, it's not hard, especially with great visibility. And even if you forget, the Spiegel Grove has 7 mooring balls on it. The Dwayne has 3 mooring balls. So if you can't make it back to your line, you come up any of them, then the boat at least knows where you are and it's picking you up.
And with those mooring balls, how often are you guys having to share those with other boats?
Well, it's easy. It's first come, first serve.
Okay.
May get the best spot, may get not the best spot.
Absolutely.
It oftentimes that kind of dictates where we go to, because the bib, for example, right, not as popular of a dive site because there's only 2 mooring balls on it, right? And if a fishing boat or 12 fishing boats get there before you do, all right, they have right of way. They're going to take those balls and fish on them. The Duane, which is really close, has 3 mooring balls on it. So you kind of have to go where a spot is open, right? The Spiegel Grove, you might think that you're going to tie up a midship, like in the middle of the wreck, and you end up tying off on the bow because it's the only place that's available, right? But the dive operators, Horizon divers will move. If you dive your first dive on one side of the wreck, we might move to the other side of the wreck to give you a completely different experience. All right.
Awesome. Okay, so let's go ahead and dive in. Let's start with some of the shallower wrecks first, and then we'll get to our deeper wrecks after that. So there is the City of Washington wreck. The history on this one is that it ran aground on July 10th in 1917. It sits in about 25 and 30 foot of water. It's about 325 feet long, but it's an actual ship that's broken up. It's very similar, if you guys know the Copenhagen up here in the Pompano Beach area. So it's broken up because over time it's degraded, and also they used to use it as target practice with the Navy. So, but the steel hull is still present. It's at the east of the north end of Key Largo, and it's great for the snorkeling and beginner divers section. So, Jeff, what is something that we should know? Like, what are some key features of the City of Washington?
So she's pretty shallow, perfect for divers and snorkelers. We teach a lot of open water classes on the city. Makes it easier to navigate than some of our patch reefs, because if you're not on the wreck, then you're wandering around, not on the wreck. There's an archway kind of in the middle of it, and that's it's what the prop shaft ran through, right? And you can swim through it. You see one of our dive masters. It's a very photogenic spot on the wreck. You'll find turtles hanging out kind of under the sheet metal every now and then. Tons of lobsters and eels. Every now and then you'll get nurse sharks. We've had one hammerhead in the last 6 months that we saw out there. And it's up on Elbow Reef, and there's probably 5 or 6 wrecks on Elbow over the last 150 years. So a nice area of tons of different ships. But the city has been probably one of Key Largo's most iconic shallow reel wrecks, right? That everybody has been diving since the 70s.
Wow, that's awesome. Okay, so let's dive into one of the other wrecks that you're talking about that's on Elbow Reef, the Hanna Bell wreck. The history on this one, again, it ran aground on April 4th of 1911. So again, another older shipwreck. This one was a steel steamship, and it was Mexico bound with a load of coal from Virginia. And she sank in about 30 feet of water, and she's about 1,000 yards south of the City of Washington. Again, great for snorkelers and beginner divers. So, Jeff, what are some of the cool features here?
So the nice thing about the Hanna Bell is she's you can get a little bit deeper than on the city, and not super deeper, but like 5 or 6 feet. And the bottom hull is very intact. Um, in fact, after Hurricane Irma, the storm surge kind of cleared out another 50, 60 feet of her hull, right? And you can really kind of see the layout of the whole ship. They actually didn't identify that it was the Hanna Bell until around 2008, 2009. The Florida Archaeological Society came out, took measurements, and kind of mapped out the ship and ultimately figured out what it was. Usually when we head out to our shallow dives, like the city, like the Hanna, we don't schedule ahead of time, right? It's kind of, they're all so many in a clustered area that we leave it up to the captains to decide where we're going to go based off of conditions. And the Hanna is one of those really good places that if we're doing open water classes, right, or we have snorkelers and divers mixed together, we get really good visibility there on Elbow Reef, right? But you can actually get a little bit deeper. One side of the Hanna, the north side of the Hanna, is actually like 15 feet deep with some high profile coral, and it's gorgeous. And then the wreck side of that reef, which is like 50 feet away, right, is all ribs and wreck. And that's the picture that you see right there, which make it super easy to navigate and just, a nice real wreck.
Awesome. Okay.
All right, so let's go to the Benwood. The Benwood sank after running into the USS Tuttle in April of 1942 during World War II, and it sits in about 25 to 45 feet of water, about 360 feet long, and it's a bit broken up, but shallow enough for the snorkelers that come around, and also for the beginner divers. Jeff, what are some cool things we're going to see on this wreck?
So the Benwood is probably my most favorite night dive in Key Largo.
Really?
Yeah, it was an actual wreck. It ran into the Robert C. Tuttle in 1942. The captain backed it up on a place called Dixie Shoal. If you swim 100 feet off the nose of the bow, you'll be in 80 feet of water. All right, it drops off really dramatically, very quickly. And the captain that was out there kind of was smart and knew that and backed it up on the shoal. In the 50s, before they completely destroyed it, they would actually have like boat parties. It was like the sandbar of Key Largo. The Navy used it as target practice for a while, and then eventually they did what's called cable dragging, where they dropped a really thick steel cable across it and ripped it apart. But the bottom bilge deck is still completely intact and clean, and then about 15 feet of the bow is still there, which makes it a gorgeous dive. There's not a whole lot in that area in the way of coral. It's more rock. So all the fish flock to it, right? What you see in that picture is there's an actual bait ball that lived on the wreck for like 2 months, which brought in like a whole horde of black grouper, because all the other little fish trying to eat the bait ball, the big fish came in to eat the little fish, and it's just gorgeous. Right there at the bottom, you can get 45 feet. If you swim out just a little bit, there's a sand bowl right in front of it where you can actually hit almost 50 feet. So if you're kind of that intermediate diver trying to get a little bit of depth, it's an easy wreck to get depth on, but easy to navigate. And you swim to the stern section of it, and it's 18 feet at its shallowest. The only drawback is sometimes you can get bad visibility because those deep areas in the front are sand bowls. So if you get some current and stuff, the viz will drop. It's really close to the Spiegel Grove. So if the Spiegel's got really strong current, a lot of times you could kind of come into a shallower, into the Benwood, a little shallower and get out of the current. But it's my favorite favoriteest night dive. Turtles, you always see turtles. Eels living inside the wreck, you always see eels. It's one of the few places where you can almost always find octopus, right, in the different sheet or in the sheet metal of the wreck, and in season is totally lobsterable. It's not in a non-take area, so you can lobster on the wreck as well.
Are most of those wrecks, what are the rules for spearfishing and lobstering around there?
So the city of Washington, the Hanna Bell, they're all in what's called a spa or a special preservation area. Inside the National Marine Sanctuary, there's areas that are balled off. They have big yellow balls that mark no take zones. All right, and there's no fishing, no lobstering, no taking of anything in those areas. Most of the National Marine Sanctuary, you're not supposed to take anything up anyway, but you can still fish with a license, obviously, right? But inside the spas, you can't touch or take anything for sure. The Benwood is outside of that. It's just north of French Reef, which is a spa zone. But that kind of opens it up because the lobster love the wreck. It's a great lobstering spot. But then, the fish flock to it, so it makes it a great diving spot as well.
Awesome.
And there you look at the layout, and you kind of see the bottom left-hand corner of the screen is the bow, and it rises up. It's about a 15-foot rise. And then the whole wreck itself is really intact on that bottom level. It's got a little protection to it. The perfect dive on that wreck is to just go around the outside, right? Do a whole circuit of the outside and then move to the inside of the wreck. You can see where the prop shaft ran down the wreck. You can see where the rudder was supposed to be. There's debris scattered in the entire area, right? But you'll see tons of little fish kind of living in the ribs. Tons of it, little fish, and the eels and the octopus live kind of underneath the wreck and between the sand and the metal itself. And then all those sheet metal that's laying out there, there's 1,000 things living underneath there. You can spend, dive upon dive just going down and kind of checking out what's underneath all of that.
Cool. Okay, so let's talk about the Bib, the U.S. Coast Guard cutter Bib wreck. The ship was built in 1937, and on November 28th, 1987, it was sank off the coast to make a beautiful dive site. The max depth to the props is around 138 feet, and the minimum depth is around 70 feet. Huge shipwreck, 327 feet long. Great for advanced divers or people looking to get their wreck specialty. What can you tell us about the wreck?
So the Bib and the Dwayne were supposed to be sank together, and they're within a week of each other. But they actually wanted them to be next to each other, right? But this is 1987. They didn't use explosives to sink wrecks back then. And they did a terrible job. The Bib sits about a half mile away from the Duane and on its side. And it's really striking how the wreck being on its side makes it a completely different dive. The Duane is really bright. There's tons of light. The Bib is a little bit dark because the shadow that the wreck kind of casts on itself. It's deeper, right? I think the numbers that are on the internet kind of reflect what it was before Hurricane Irma. You don't really touch the wreck on the mooring balls until you're at about 90 feet. Your average dive depth is going to be about 110. That's where the smokestack and the crow's nest really are. It's not like we just don't dive it very often, because bottom times on it are going to be 15, 20 minutes. And even on nitrox, you're going to get probably 25 minutes on it. It's great for lionfish, Artie, if you're looking for lionfish. It's usually packed full because we don't really dive it that often.
Is it all right to penetrate for like tech divers and such?
It's a super interesting penetration because it lays on its side. Yeah. It's not like the Spiegel Grove or the Duane, or even a lot of the wrecks in like Pompano, like the Hydro Atlantic or the Low Rants. Because it lays on its side, it's almost like a real wreck.
Might be disorienting a little bit being inside, right?
In back mount, it's actually kind of hard. In side mount, it's the only wreck that we have where side mount penetration is actually really good. And they really, in 87, when they put the wrecks down, they weren't intending people to go inside and do penetration. They were intending just to have a wreck to bring fish in. Not even really divers back then. That was kind of like the secondary benefit out of it. So doorways and access and hatches down into like the engine rooms or the crew quarters aren't really open. They have been opened over the years because of storm. But it's a really good technical penetration, really challenging penetration. And because of the depth on it, because compared to other wrecks on the east coast of Florida, it's shallow for technical divers. It's a good kind of early advanced wreck penetration. For the advanced diver, the advanced recreational diver, it's nice because you get deep and you stay deep. But compared to the Spiegel Grove or the Duane, this one, it holds you deep. There's no access or no option for shallower water, which tends to be a little bit of a drawback for a lot of divers, a lot of dive operators. On the Duane, you can get up in 70, 80 feet. On the Spiegel, you can get up in 70, 80 feet. With the bib, you're at 90, and that's where you go. But a beautiful, beautiful dive, and not done very often. There's only 2 mooring balls on it. In fact, I think right now there's only 1 mooring ball on it because it's been broken.
Is the current typically worse over there?
You know, the Spiegel and the Duane, so the bib and the Duane are right next to each other. So a lot of times if the Duane and bib have current, the dive operators, the dive boats will move up to the Spiegel Grove. And it's a little bit more protected, a little bit more hidden. One of the drawbacks to the bib is if there is current, it lays right into the wreck. So you have nowhere to hide. There's no way to get out of it except for sit on the opposite side, on the hull side of the wreck, where you're not in you're not in the smokestacks and the wheelhouse and stuff like that. You're kind of just hiding on the hull, and that's not nearly as interesting of a dive for people.
Okay, great.
Well, it's funny because we talked about it being so close to the Duane. Our next wreck we're going to talk about is the Duane. And if you look at the dates, the bib was sunk on November 28th of 1987. Well, the Duane was sunk 2 days prior to that. So it looks like they were having a wreck sinking party on that in that November of that year. Again, it was made as a site for people to go diving on as an artificial reef to bring more fish in. The max depth here is 125 feet with a minimum depth at 60 feet. And this Coast Guard cutter is 327 feet long. And again, we're looking for the advanced diver or technical diver. And Jeff, what are some of the cool features on this wreck?
So the Duane is the same ship as the bib. All right, they're Secretary class Coast Guard cutters. They were all named after secretaries of the Treasury for the history buffs out there. The Duane sits upright, and it completely changes the dive site. It's beautiful in that you can get into shallower water. The picture that you see right there is of the crow's nest, right? Where the diver is sitting is about 70 feet of water, maybe 75 feet of water, right? And the crow's nest goes up to 60. Everything is completely intact, and it's a beautiful, beautiful wreck. And you get people that love the Duane or they love the Spiegel Grove, right? And one of the things that they love about the Duane is you're most likely to see sharks or turtles or a ton of fish on the Duane, because the wreck's roughly a third of the size of the Spiegel Grove. It's relatively narrow at 45 feet wide. It's shorter at 327, which brings all the fish, consolidates everything onto the wreck. It's great. I've seen hammerheads out there. Every dive, if you look the right direction, you're going to see a bull shark. The reef shark love it out there. I've actually been hit in the shoulder by sea turtle that are swimming down to hide in the wreck. Gorgeous, gorgeous wreck. This is the only wreck in Key Largo that's far enough south that you can actually spearfish on. Okay. Everything else, the bib and the Spiegel, and then all the shallow wrecks we have, spearfishing is illegal, even for lionfish. All right. And we do get a lot of guys that come down thinking that they can spearfish lionfish on the reefs or on the wrecks, and you can't. Most of the charters that we run, we don't mix spearfishing with our recreational divers, right? But the Dwayne will definitely have boaters there. If you look on the card is pre-Irma, which is kind of interesting because it tells you how the wrecks will change. The smokestack that is in the middle right there is actually gone. It's laying in the sand next to the wreck on the starboard side. All of the superstructure in the front of that has kind of been worn away. There's less protection on it now. It's really good wreck for swim throughs. All the doors that you see down on the main deck, right? You're talking 30-foot max from one door to the next. So great penetration. The gunnels that run along the entire length of the wreck always have something like a green moray eel, or some juvenile fish sitting in there, all the way up to the bow. And kind of my favorite thing on the Duane is to go all the way up to the bow section right there and kind of hang out in the current and look out, do your Titanic moment, and then look down. And when you look down, you almost always see a Goliath grouper living down on the anchor line right there. It's just a beautiful, beautiful wreck. And because it's so small, you're going to see tons of life on it.
Awesome.
Actually, guys, when he's talking about life, let me bring in a video. All right, guys, this video, really quick, we'll show it. Let's see if I can solo it. There we go. This is back in 2013 when a couple of divers went down and they saw, let's see what they saw. Let's see if it's kind of a lengthy video, but let's see. There they go. There's that mooring ball. Let's see. And oh, I spoiled it. There it goes.
Dun it.
So how cool would that be to see that shark while diving? Amazing.
We actually had 3 great white sightings that summer. One of them was on the safety stop on the Eagle at 15 feet. The other was here on the Duane. And then another was in Key West on a super shallow reef with a bunch of Discover Scubas, a bunch of non-certified divers kind of going out of the water for the first time. And the shark rolled right up on them in like 20 feet of water. It was crazy.
All right, we've got another video for you guys. This one was shot by you, Jeff. So
hey.
Go ahead and walk us.
Dwayne.
We're going to walk you through what it's like to penetrate.
So this is a tech dive on the Duane. Again, when they sank the wreck, they didn't really open things up for divers to get into. So you kind of got to get creative. It's a small ship too, so there's only 2 decks that are actually available. You kind of have to go down the floor right there. And for those of you that aren't advanced rec certified, you shouldn't try this. All right. But you can swim the entire length of the wreck. You can get into the engines, right? Basic crew quarters. Really silty down there. There's not a lot of water transfer. And like I said, it's not like the Spiegel or the Vandenberg or the Oriskany, if you've ever seen any of those. Back in the 80s when they put wrecks down, I mean, they left most of the stuff inside the wreck. So there's light fixtures that have fell down, doors that swing halfway open. But a gorgeous, gorgeous dive. Pressure gauges and piping. Everything from the engine is still in there. For those wreck divers, for those technical divers, it's actually really, really tight, but really authentic, even as an artificial reef, as a wreck penetration. And there's the engine. We're in the engine room right there. You're at about 125 feet right there, and pretty tight. Right. You gotta watch how you kick and move, right? But super, super fun. For those adventurous guys running doubles and rebreathers and training, this is my happy place right here.
Awesome. All right, so let's go ahead and hide that there. All right, so here we go. Next wreck.
All right, the Spiegel Grove, my favorite. On May 17th, 2002, it was sank off the coast to make a beautiful dive site, laying on her side, and then Hurricane Dennis popped her back upright. The max depth on the prop is around 144 feet. Minimum depth is around 62 feet, so it's great for all different types of divers. Ship is about 510 feet long, so she's real massive. It's great for advanced wreck, penetration, getting wreck certified, advanced divers. Go ahead, Jeff, tell us all about the Spiegel.
Oh, this is my home right here. Over 1,000 dives on the Spiegel over the last 10 years. And I've been on just about every inch of the wreck, from the recreational side to the technical. I love this wreck. For the guys that tell me that they want to go to a different dive site every day, I could go to the Spiegel and be happy. It's got everything for anyone. You don't want to go inside of a wreck, you don't have to. There's tons of outside area to travel. There's tons of recreational penetration. She was put down in 2002. All right, so a couple years after the Dwayne, and we've learned in that 5-6 years on the things that we need to do. Cutouts to make swim throughs easier. The hallways are a little bit more clean. So it makes penetrations a little bit easier, a little bit less technical for the recreational divers. And if you're 100 feet or shallower on the Spiegel, there's always an exit to the outside. You usually, depending on where you are, there's like one or two places, but you can almost always see ambient light to get out on. Below 100 feet, it's all technical penetration. Single entry, single exit, down to the engine rooms, the pump rooms, the prop shafts, right? Very technical penetration. So for one wreck to have all kinds or all those levels of diving on it, it's kind of really unique to it. The bottom, if you're in the sand, you're at 135 feet, right? So for the recreational divers out there, right, most of the wreck is, in fact, almost all of the wreck is actually accessible to you. To my technical divers out there, it's in a shallow enough depth, and I say shallow meaning kind of less than 150 feet, that you can get tons of bottom time on. You can wander all the hallways, right? Do tons of penetration on it. And it's opened up over the years. I mean, this thing has laid on 3 of its 4 sides. When they originally sank it, it was upside down and floating out of the water.
Wow.
They had to hook a tugboat up to it and roll it around to get it to lay on its side. It laid on its starboard side for a couple years. And then Hurricane Dennis, actually, the storm surge, rocked it onto its bottom, onto its keel. So tons of history on this wreck. Just gorgeous diving. The bow tip, kind of like the iconic picture that you see of the Spiegel, right? Right there, yeah, right there. Everybody wants their picture with the bow. The Spiegel Beagle, which the Spiegel Grove in one of its last exercises was the top-rated ship in the exercise in its class. So it was the top dog, right? Hence the Snoopy. And because it was what's called a landing ship dock or an LSD, it's like a pickup truck in that it has a tailgate that drops down, and they would launch amphibious assault craft out of it, like hovercraft, or they could bring small boats and vessels in to do some maintenance, or they could just load it up with cargo. But that's where kind of the alligator comes from. And you look at the picture, you see Snoopy is actually riding an alligator because the back end could sink, right, while the front end stayed afloat, which actually is why when they sank it, it rolled upside down and the bow stayed on the surface and everything else sank. But I mean, like I said, you could dive every day on that wreck. The galley is still there. There are ovens, flat tops in it. The machine shop is still there with lathes and drill presses. It's a beautiful dive.
How about that American flag everybody likes to take pictures with?
So right there, yeah, right aft of the superstructure, kind of right in the middle of the ship. Guys think it's the crane operator's tower, and it's actually pry fly or flight ops. There used to be a helicopter pad on the back of it, and they could land up to 3 helicopters on it. And that was kind of the flight operations center right there. But there's an American flag. I've changed it out a bunch of times. There's a couple other instructors in the area. We'll change it out every 4 to 6 months. All right. So it's fresh and clean, and you get that nice picture on it. The cranes. So the Spiegel Grove is the only place in Key Largo I've ever seen a frogfish.
Wow.
Right. I've seen frogfish there, hammerheads. Right now, we've had a couple reef sharks that have pretty much just been living on that wreck for the past year. Always like hermit and African pompano, just tons and tons. There's gliders we're living on there. It's a gorgeous dive. If you're coming to Key Largo, the Spiegel Grove, all right, is that iconic wreck dive that you definitely want to do.
Another thing I wanted to mention is I've been on this dive, and they usually have the little small bait fish during certain periods of time, and that is really cool to photograph because they're just kind of intertwining in some of the superstructure there.
Oh yeah, they'll get into the well deck, into that pickup truck bed area, where the crane arms are, even underneath, and I mean they'll take up the entire area. And there's tons of bigger fish that are jetting through the bait ball. I mean it is gorgeous dive, and any time of year it's completely different as the seasons change. We'll get tarpon here in probably, it's May now. So here in about a month, we should get the tarpon, like the big tarpon coming out of the shallow water for mating season. And they'll hang out on the Spiegel Grove, which, to have a big silver fish just come out of nowhere is kind of, scary, but awesome once you realize it's a tarpon.
Isn't there a toilet exposed all the way back by the stern?
So in the well deck, there's actually, as you're swimming through, there's tons of lavatories still there, tons of heads still there. There's a couple mirrors that are still intact.
Wow.
Right. And then right at the bottom of the well deck is totally a toilet. So you go down, it's at 120 feet. You get your iconic picture sitting on the Spiegel toilet, right?
I have that.
Well, here's a video that's actually by you. We're going to go ahead and play this. So here we go.
That's that bow section that everybody wants to see. 80-foot penetrations. You're coming through. This is actually the dark waters room, right? Again, cutouts that are there make it easy to get in and out of. You know, the 8-ball or the bow ball dumps out right there on that bow tip, which makes it easy to get, to navigate off of, because you're just coming to the pointy end. Here we're hanging out at like 130 feet. There's our mooring ball system. So this is the big difference down here. If you're on your safety stop, you're at 15 feet, and everybody's hanging out at 15 feet with you. Horizon divers, gotta love them.
Awesome. Okay, so speaking of who wants to go dive it?
Yeah.
All right. Rachel, tell us a little bit about what we're going to be doing this month.
We are hopefully going to be doing a double dip on the Spiegel, as long as the weather allows us to. And that will be a beautiful day trip. We're going to leave early Saturday morning, but if you'd like to go up the night before or stay a night, we can always talk about different, accommodations. And that is going to be May 21st. So we only have about 3 weeks left before. So we do have some spots left if you're interested. And I love this dive, and Jeff does too. And it really will be a wonderful day. So we really, really hope that you guys come out and dive with us. And if you'd like to sign up, you can either go on the 4C website and you could sign up on there, or you could go into any of the shops and you could sign up in person. Awesome.
And just let Bill know, right? We always double dip. We never do deep shallow unless it's a private charter or conditions require, which opens it up. Recreational divers, you're going to get 2 dives on the wreck. We always allow technical divers, right? So if you're coming down with doubles from 4C, right, it's right there. We're going to be on the wreck for 2 hours and 20 minutes. Okay, and we're kind of easy about that in that we'll tell you that it's 10 o'clock. We're going to leave at 12:20. Plan your dives accordingly. All right. So for my recreational divers, you can do a 30-40 minute bottom time followed by a surface interval. And then, depending on what your second dive is going to be, another 30-minute dive, right? We really leave it up to you, as long as you stay out of deco if you're recreationally diving, right? And you come back to our boat, right? For my technical divers, we're going to ask you what your run time is, how long are you going to be down. If you're planning on doing penetration, we kind of want to know where you're going. And then we just expect you back at your run time. So if you tell me it's going to be 70, 80 minutes, we expect you at 80 minutes back on board the boat.
Okay. Well, this is the time. If anybody has any questions, type them in. I know you guys we've been answering your questions as we've been going along. So Cameron has a question. What CCR does Jeff suggest for wreck diving in the Keys?
I'm going to tell you, Cameron, what
friends, right?
Hopefully not myself.
Oh, what happened in the volume? Something happened in the volume.
I think it's because the physical one's gone too.
Can you hear me now?
Oh, there we go.
Good. I can hear you now.
So I'm certified on 4 different rebreathers. I honestly love a JJ. as a back-mounted rebreather. I teach the chest-mounted Optima. It's kind of the new hotness in CCR right now, and I really love it. Inside the wreck, it's really flexible. You can do kind of whatever you want to do with it. It's there's not a wrong rebreather for the Spiegel or the Dwayne. The wrecks are perfect for anything back mounted or chest mounted. I think a side mount rebreather down here is a little bit more complicated. You end up having to go sideways through the wreck a lot.
All right, so lionfish. People want to know, how many lionfish you guys seen on these wrecks? Are you guys able to go out and capture them and get them out of there, or is it just filled with lionfish?
So not a lot. Typically, if we see one, we'll go down and get it. There's no spear fishing allowed in the National Marine Sanctuary of Key Largo. So usually private divers aren't allowed to go down with a spear, even a lionfish spear. Right. But there's so many divers that hit the Spiegel Grove, hit the Dwayne, hit the bib. Right. And definitely the reefs. Anytime we see a lionfish on the reef, we'll usually just pop back up, grab a lionfish spear, go down and kill it, right, and call it a day. On the wrecks, they tend to get a little bit harder to chase down, right? But there's not a lot on there, not on the recreational side. I think I saw 2 out there the other day, and they were gone by today.
Wow. All right. And another question I had, I've heard that there's another wreck. I don't know if it's in Key Largo, but there's one that has sawfish on it. Do you know anything about this wreck?
So there are sawfish in the Florida Keys. They're all over. The easiest way to see them is to go backcountry fishing in the Everglades.
Okay.
Where you're in like 5 feet of water. Right. I've seen them on a wreck called the Queen of Nassau. She's down in Almirada and 220 feet of water. Right. Very deep. And the deeper you go, the bigger the fish get. Right. They don't like people. They don't hang around. The only times I've seen them have been right at the beginning of the dive. And on those wrecks, we typically hot drop and drift off. So whoever the first diver is to get down kind of only gets to see the glimpse and they swim away. The easier way of doing it is, like I said, going on a backcountry fishing charter. Right, in Almirada, you see them all the time. In backcountry, you'll catch them, right, and have to cut them loose. We've had schools of hammerhead.
Wow.
More often, especially in Almirada, kind of off of the humps in Almirada where the deeper wrecks are, where it's like 50 or 60 hammerhead. I'll show people pictures and they'll think it's like the Galapagos or Cocos. And I'm like, no, it's Almirada.
That's great.
Is there a hotel that you can recommend for anybody who wants to come down and do a few days of diving there?
So you got a bunch of options, and it's getting more and more expensive every day. In Key Largo, there's the Courtyard Marriott and the Holiday Inn. There's a couple resorts down there. So if you're bringing your significant other, the resorts are kind of nicer, like the bungalows. Usually for our guys that are coming down, my technical divers, the guys that are sticking around and trying to get every dive that they can, so they're trying to save money, they'll stay in Homestead, right, in Florida City. Right, okay. It's 25 minutes up the road. It's actually where I live, and then they'll just drive down in the morning. Right, the hotels are usually half the cost. It's easy to get down. It's easy to get back. Right. Nowadays, with the way hotel prices have gotten, it's getting harder and harder to find a deal. And Airbnb is definitely very doable down here. The county is trying to, kind of regulate that a little bit, But if you've got a group of people, Airbnb is definitely the easiest answer.
Cool.
Awesome. Thanks for that.
All right. So we are going to bring in our raffle. So guys, like we said in the beginning of the presentation, if you registered for tonight's event on our Eventbrite link, we took your names, we put it in a random name picker, and we are going to be gifting you the SDI Enriched Air Nitrox digital kit. So here is our names, and here is the button. Da, 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 da. Let's see. Carl. You know what? I know that Carl's already a certified nitrox diver. So Carl, I'm going to gift you a few nitrox fills to 4C. So let's give somebody else a chance here. Da, 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 da. Ken Rogers, you are the winner. So Carl and Ken, congratulations on winning tonight's raffle. And also, guys, we have this Sunday, Mother's Day. Make sure you get your diving moms something at 4C. We have this great gift ideas here, or you can come in and talk to any of the store staff and they can help you get an awesome gift for your scuba diving mom. Don't know what to get her? Go to the top of our website, go to gift card, click it, and give her something from us. All right, guys. So we want to say thank you to all the photographers who Mark Kasarin and
Alex Brzezinski and
Jeff. Some of those photos were yours.
Thanks for all your beautiful photography. We appreciate it.
Excellent. So, guys, you know what time it is. It's time to say, may the 4th be with you. See you, everybody. Thanks, Jeff, for a great presentation.
Hey, guys.
Good diving.